Nobody can convince me that that doesn't exist in this life. Now, I wanted to have a conversation and just bring up some of why I think Bethel and churches get involved with cover-up culture, how destructive I think it truly is, what Shawn Bolz was involved in with his prophetic ministry, what I speculate was the reason why he might have gotten involved in that type of fake prophecy to begin with, and some of what I think has happened in the church as a result, the organization of church maybe not running the way that God had originally intended, and some of the platforms and pedestals that we create and feel the necessity to step into, and some of how we create culture around praising the gift over character. So a few things though, because we've worked with thousands of life coaching clients now, I have had many clients that have dealt with religious abuse, people that have a place of spiritual and religious authority, abusing that authority in someone's life, whether that's to take advantage of them personally, one-on-one, or whether it's to get a need met like significance or acceptance or something from your gift coming out. And it can be so destructive. And when you start to work with the victims of different experiences like this, you see that this is not a victimless crime that's been committed. This is truly something that is abusive. The more that I'm a believer, the longer that I'm a Christian, I learned that people, humanity, human beings cannot be placed on a pedestal. And I think the longer you are a Christian, the more you've been involved in different circles or streams of Christianity, you start to realize how unhealthy it can be to start to derive your source of needs from a person or even a community. When we're in the most vulnerable of experiences in our lives, sometimes it's really easy to attach all of our core needs to a person or a community or a movement. I got a word from Shawn Bolz years ago, and he was going around this prayer line. It was kind of funny because we all line up and everybody's waiting to hear the word from the special anointed man. And he's going around, he's giving everybody a word, and there's literally like 1,000 people in this big auditorium over at Bethel. And he's going one by one, he's giving prophetic words, and he comes up to me and he's like, media. He's like, I just see media on you and impacting families, and I see leader of leaders, and there's a youth movement on you, and he shares all these different things. And then a year later, sees me, doesn't recognize you, probably because he's seen thousands of people, gives me the same word almost. And I was like, is that just what you do? You just give people the same word? And he's like, oh yeah. And he's like, we kind of played it off. I think back then, I didn't feel like anything was off. I didn't feel like anything was weird. But then some years into it, you started noticing that Shawn Bolz started getting more and more clear and precise with different words of knowledge and prophecies. Now, personally, my thought is that I believe that there are instances which he had crazy prophetic words. You know, for me, I remember being in a revival group, which was basically like a small church group at Bethel School of Ministry. They kind of brought you into these groups of 80 or 90 students that were led by a main revival group pastor, then interns that kind of helped facilitate a little bit smaller leadership level with the students. And as a first year student, I had already had a history of praying for people on the streets all the time, and had functioned in the prophetic, had seen people get healed, and was just like really connected to what God could do in the miraculous. And my revival group pastor brought me into this room one day, and this guy that was a friend of one of our revival group students was there, and this guy that was just randomly invited in was in this room, and we were brought, it was me, and it was like 4 other students that kind of had some connection to the prophetic, that had functioned in that gift of the Spirit. And we were brought into this room to give this random guy, nobody knew who he was, a prophetic word. And he had come from like, all that we knew about him is that he kind of came from like a more religious background where he didn't believe in the gifts of the Spirit, or it was fairly new for him. And his friend who was in our group wanted him to have an experience of God that changed his paradigm about how God might be able to show up and have it be different than his past experiences. And this is fairly common for Bethel. I brought my dad there, and he had a pretty wild experience of having his ear open up in the healing rooms, you know. So this experience, we're each just sitting there praying to God and listening and hearing and seeing if we have anything that we see or sense or think that is not a thought that we had before. And we're just kind of going, okay, like, what's God doing? What's he saying? And I just had the most idiotic feeling when I saw this picture. And I was like, well, that's usually how I know. If I feel insecure about it, I might as well share it. So I told this guy, I think his name was Brad, and I was like, hey, this might sound totally ridiculous, but It might not mean anything to you, but I see like this picture of this 4-year-old, like little girl, almost like 3, 4, 5, something like that, is in pink clothes with a fake microphone singing. And before I could even get the rest of what I was seeing out, he burst into tears, just like sob crying. It was so palpable. You could feel it. Something just happened in the room. And I didn't even know what I was saying, to be honest, but I had known enough about following the breadcrumbs of what I think God might be doing in a moment to know like, okay, just follow this, and I wasn't super secure in the word or anything. This guy goes, stop, everybody stop. He's like, stop, I need to show you something. And this guy takes out his phone and he says, I just got this video this morning. I'm the only person that's seen it. And he pulls out his phone and he goes, look, and it's a video of his daughter, who's 4 years old, blonde, in her pink pajamas with a fake microphone, singing How Great Is Our God. And part of the word that I gave him, and I think I might have actually finished it, or maybe I finished it afterwards, I was like, well, I just felt from the Lord that your words of a father over your daughter are like really powerful for calling out her destiny and affirming her in her relationship with God or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I've had moments like that are so clear, and you're like, nobody can fabricate that. Nobody can convince me that doesn't exist in this life now. Nobody can convince me that God doesn't speak like that now. Some of you guys watching this, maybe you don't believe that, but you could never do anything to convince me that God doesn't speak clearly about stuff. The amount of experiences I've had like that and more that have so clearly validated that the gifts of the Spirit are for now, it's like nobody could convince me otherwise. I will start with that because I do believe at some point personally that Shawn Bolz was functioning in real gifts of the Spirit, words of knowledge, prophetic. My question is, have we created a culture that so praises that gifting and places men on pedestals, like leaders like that, for their gifting in a way that we carry a responsibility as a church in this, in that he started entering into pressure because of his deficits, and this is where his responsibility falls, is he had unhealed and unfulfilled deficits in his own life that he allowed to be treated by ministry outcomes. Did he enter into a place of deep insignificance that never got healed, that the moment he started functioning in the prophetic, he believed he needed to continue doing it at that level in order to continue to feel enough, to feel like he was enough, to feel that significance he got from people. It's a weird thing. When you speak on a stage and you have 500 people going like, yes, when you have 1,000 people in an auditorium going like, yes, praise God for this man of God. And you can feel, man, all these people love me. They love me. Wow. It is hard not to take that and go, I need to keep doing whatever I'm doing in order to sustain this experience.